tonight we have Harry and Carter from Acquisition Alert, which is, Harry and I actually went to UVA together. We're old friends, and I'll let them kind of talk about their experience. But basically, they've done a lot of, kind of institutional work with traditional search funds and things of that nature, kind of going through deal flows for bigger investors. And so what they did was they launched Acquisition Alert. It's a wonderful newsletter. I think it's incredibly informative, and they kind of go through what they're seeing in the market and kind of just give a little bit of, their top 5. And then there's also some services that they'll offer to support people with, how the hell do you get through deal flow? So that's pretty much that in a nutshell. I want to kind of, use all their time. So tonight we're going to kind of go through what they do, and they're going to kind of show us their process. And I think it's going to be a really great session because it's going to be, a really tangible, skill set that we can all kind of learn from. So as always, these are all recorded. So definitely I'd recommend going back to the recordings and kind of using this as a teaching tool. So anyways, Harry and Carter, the floor is yours.
Cool. Thanks, Mac.
Yeah, sure.
Like Charlie said, my name's Harry Pershing. I've been involved in the search fund world for about 3 years now. Prior to, I was an economist at a few different banks, but as soon as I kind of learned about ETA, I was hooked pretty quickly. I went back on my MBA, got more involved there. Actually interned with Next Gen Growth Partners, which I'm sure some of you are aware of. It's a search fund accelerator based out of Chicago. And they've had a few different veterans be entrepreneurs in residence. I actually worked with a guy by the name of Drew Childs, who's a veteran, and he actually just closed on a HVAC company in Kentucky. So he's now operating that. So if anybody on the call is actually interested, maybe not in self-funded or traditional, but is interested in perhaps a accelerator of sorts, let me know. I'm happy to make a warm introduction to the people at Next Gen Growth Partners. I'm going to kick it over to Carter. He'll give you a brief intro, and then we'll kind of get into the presentation.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Harry. And thanks so much, Charlie. But I'll give you guys a little bit of background on me, and then kind of how Harry and I met and, our progression so far. So I spent a few years actually as a business broker. I moved from a business broker over to the private equity space, where I was sourcing both on and off market deals for our company. We were doing a roll-up of manufacturing companies. And while I was there, I just developed some really efficient ways of kind of bringing in some high quality deal flow. And at the company, Harry and I ended up meeting, and our interests within the search fund space just kind of aligned. And we decided to leave that company and go out and start our own search fund. And so about a month into our search, we realized we started receiving a lot of just really high quality deals all over the country. And we had a very narrow search geography. So we were looking specifically within Southern California. And we didn't want all these deals to just be wasted. And so we decided to come up with Acquisition Alert to kind of start sharing these deals with other searchers around the country. And so now I'll hand it back to Harry, and he can kind of go over what the structure of our presentation is going to look like today.
Cool. Thanks, Carter. So at Acquisition Alert, and kind of in our process of doing our own search fund, we have a lot of interactions with searchers, brokers, investors. And there's, we kind of noticed a clumping of questions and confusion into different categories. Namely, there are, major blind spots and kind of patterns of these blind spots. So we figured we're going to devote this presentation to 3 blind spots that we see kind of over and over again. One being engaging with brokers and kind of making the most of your time when you have an engagement with a broker. So that's number 1. 2 is developing a tech stack. That's kind of a buzzword you hear. Tech stack, what does that mean? And specifically kind of CRM management within that. We kind of identified that as the most important component of the tech stack. And then 3, industry scorecard. In the process of a search, this space has evolved pretty rapidly over the past few years, whereas it might be tough to even find a high number of deals. Now the problem is not necessarily having a quantity, but it's having a good quality of deal flow. And the name of the game, at least is how we see it, is being able to filter very efficiently and effectively. And kind of the primary filter that we look at is industry scorecard. It can be a very efficient way of filtering down the number of deals that you're looking at. And as you guys all know, time is the greatest resource in a search. So with that, Carter's going to kick it off with first blind spot being broker engagement.
Perfect. Yeah. So just to add a quick note on what Harry mentioned. So we've obviously not acquired a business yet. We're searchers just like you guys. And so we're not here to, advise on financing a business or, give you insight on how to run operations within a small business. But what we do know how to do is search for a business and bring in good deals. And so with this, we tried to pinpoint just some kind of tactical topics to bring, to you guys that one, we didn't find just generally searching on the internet, and two, we're not super common just on like SMB Twitter. But to touch on that as well, we also want to just keep this totally informal. So if anyone has any questions throughout the presentation, just jump in and ask us. But regarding broker engagement, so to start off, I just want to emphasize that brokers are obviously paid on commission. And so if a broker does not think you're a serious buyer, there's no way they're going to waste their time sending you deals and even returning your phone calls. And so as a searcher, the most important thing is to make sure the broker understands that you're not going to waste their time and that you're a serious searcher that actually can close on a deal. And so there's a few different documents that we've put together and that we use when we go and do our outreach to brokers. One of which is the one pager, which is a document that's essential that we send to both brokers as well as bankers. But primarily it highlights, your business information, your acquisition criteria and your personal biographies. What we use, this is the document that's shown on the screen here, but what we use is Canva. You can download it for free, mock up a template on there, and following your conversations with business brokers, just shoot that over to them. They have your information. They know you're serious. They know you've done your homework and you're not going to waste their time. Second would be an investment memo. This is primarily important. We see more so for bankers. And this is, a detailed document that includes your investment thesis, overview of your search criteria, your specific strategy, and then just a high level overview of your investment, your investment opportunity. So, for example, we talk about the opportunity that we see in the small business space. On top of that, we created an acquisition capital packet, which is basically your financial resume. And so this packet is, again, to show brokers that you have actual financial backing. And if not investors, then you at least have SBA pre-approval. And so it's a, personal balance sheet, SBA pre-approval letter, and then if necessary, an investor, soft capital commitment letter. And then lastly would be just a simple website. And, with all of these kind of within your arsenal, I think it prepares you really well to contact brokers, contact bankers, and just have the necessary documentation to prove to them that you know what you're doing and you have, done your research and you know what you're talking about. And so how do you find these business brokers to go after? We love the IBBA, which is a database of all serious business brokers, we like to put it, because these, in order to get onto the IBBA, you have to pay an annual fee, take some exams, I think, and it's like annually. And so if business brokers obviously get paid on commission, and so if they're not closing deals and actually doing deals, most likely they won't be subscribed to that site. And you can filter through specific geographies. You can filter for specific certifications, and they have their emails and phone numbers listed directly on the website. And so we found that to be a super helpful platform to be able to go out and reach out to these brokers. But those were some of the kind of just high level documents that we put together right at the beginning of our search prior to even reaching out to any brokers or bankers. But if you guys are interested in learning a little bit more about some of specific documents that you can use for that, we have more resources within our toolkit on our website. It's acquisitionalert.com. But at this point, we can transition over to more of the tech stack. And kind of what we're looking to do here is break down just a basic tech stack where these are kind of the core softwares and systems that we put into place right when we started our search, just to kind of organize our entire workflow. And so, Charlie, if you want to hop to that next slide.
Yep. Are you on tech? You see tech stack, or?
I see broker engagement.
Weird. My slide. Let me see.
There we go.
Okay.
Got it.
Okay.
Cool. So first of all, we understand a lot of searchers don't come from a sales background. It's obviously very common for finance, people getting out of the finance industry to get into search. But we would highly recommend searchers use some form of a CRM, not just an Excel spreadsheet. Having a good CRM is just really important, both for on and off market deal flow. You can track your engagements with brokers, sellers, investors, bankers, and all of your deals while monitoring the specific stages that they're in. This is especially true when you're doing a traditional search, because when you're reporting to your investors, you want to make sure they know exactly what stages all of your deals are in. I mean, self-funded too, you obviously want to be transparent with everyone involved and where your deals are and kind of what's going on. And so on the right side of the slide here, we laid out it's just an example of how we structure our off-market pipeline stages. And so when we put somebody into our CRM, which we use SalesMate, they have a free trial. It's pretty easy to use and it's relatively affordable. But once we input a lead into our SalesMate account, it either goes into Find Contact, which if they don't have an email or phone number, it goes into Find Contact. If they do, we put them directly into Owner Identified, and then it just flows through the rest of these stages. So, once we call the reception, it moves to reception contacted, voicemail, contact owner. They're either interested or not interested. Send over an offer. The timing is bad, looking at the financials, and then if we pass on the opportunity. And so kind of what this does is just allows us to get a very good grasp of our entire search process, what's going on at a very high level, and then we can use that information to very easily report back to investors or whoever else is involved in our search. It really just kind of allows you to let the data guide your search. But we're big proponents on the whole CRM and kind of leveraging it to its, ability. But second would be leveraging a specific deals email. And so what we did was we set up a deals at Bluebird. That's our search fund name. And so we have a specific email that when we call brokers, we sign up to their broker lists, and it's solely for deals. And so we go in there once a week, look at, all of the deals that come through on these lists, and are just constantly monitoring that email account that's just flooded with these broker email lists. And so once you get off the phone with the broker on that first call, you can have them subscribe your email to their weekly list, send over that one pager, and then send over that acquisition capital packet. And you'll be pretty prepared following that first conversation with the broker. And then third, it's not completely mandatory, but we really are glad that we use a phone service. We use Dialpad, which is a service that connects to Outlook and Gmail. but we call through it. And it's especially important, one, if you have interns, and two, if you're doing a search that's not within the region that you live in, because it allows you to have an area code that's aligned with that same region. And so we call in the same region that we live in, but if you're calling in a different state, it's very helpful because a lot of sellers will pick up far more often if they have the same area code as you. And so we would highly recommend that. They, again, Dialpad, they have a free trial and it integrates with all your software already. So it's a really useful tool. But with that, I'll hand it back to Harry and he kind of walk you guys through how we specifically analyze our industries when we're going after specific sectors.
Cool. Thanks, Connor. And Charlie, are you able to switch it to the next slide, please?
Yeah, yep.
Cool. There we go.
Good to go.
Yeah. So as Carter mentioned, when we're evaluating industries, it's absolutely crucial to have a consistent methodology. So this is the scorecard that we use. It's by no means the only scorecard out there. This we kind of created by talking with different searchers, kind of combining different ones. And even if you're industry agnostic, which a lot of people are, it's still crucial to have a scorecard and be able to eliminate certain industries, emphasis, focus on certain ones based on what your scorecard is telling you. And again, it's a must-have in order to compare industries to industries. And again, it doesn't have to be this one, but as long as you're applying the same one consistently, it's going to make your life a whole lot easier. I'm actually going to share a quick link in the chat. So that should just populate. So there's a professor at Yale, AJ Wasserstein, and he's collaborated with a few different people in the search fund world. And this paper, on the nature of economic characteristics, is a great primer on kind of how to view industries, which characteristics are worth examining. And that paper is basically distilled somewhat into this scorecard. And again, so we're quick high level. In order to read it, the left-hand column are the different categories. You'll see there's a different weight assigned to each category. So for example, industry growth, you'll see 25%. That's a much higher weighted category than, barriers to entry. The oft-heard adage, you'd rather have an okay company in a growing industry than a growing company in a shrinking industry. So that kind of zeroes in on the industry growth. And then basically there's quantitative and qualitative type metrics related to each category, and then you assign a score. So for example, the industry growth, that's obviously a quantitative metric, thus it's fairly objective, the score that you assign it. It might take a little research in order to find the actual data related to it. But for example, industry growth, I'm sure many of you are members of searchfunder.com. If you are, you have access to the IBIS World Reports. That's a number you can find like that. So again, for the quantitative categories, it's fairly objective and easy to assign a numerical score to it. For the quantitative ones, it might take a little more research. It might be a little more, finger in the air. So for example, exogenous risks with regard to many, several, or remote none. It's going to be, a game time decision, so to speak. You might have to do a little more research in order to assign a value of a 2 or a 3 to that. So the best way to, I guess, learn how to use this, obviously, is to apply it to real world examples. So Charlie, if you'd be so kind to flip the next slide.
Yep.
We're going to go through just quickly 2 examples. They're kind of opposite ends of the spectrum, but again, it's a quick demonstration of kind of how to apply the scorecard and quickly filter out through industry. So ice cream store, unsurprisingly, it's not a very popular search fund target, but with the scorecard, we can actually learn why it's not. So quickly running through it, industry growth, again, not surprisingly, ice cream stores are not exploding. Based on quick research, they're pretty much flatlining for a variety of reasons. That is a score of 1. And again, very simply, the score, you multiply the 1 times the weight. So in the far right-hand column, you'll see that equation borne out there. Industry size, sure, it's a large company, it's a large industry, that gets a 5. Just kind of highlighting a few. Cyclicality, again, this is one that's a little more qualitative. Typically, anything that's retail, especially in the food industry, this is going to be discretionary spending. Most things that are discretionary spending are going to be very cyclical. And actually, you can probably have a separate line item with regard to seasonality. And this would also be a 1 or a 2. Nobody's really buying ice cream in the winter. With that, there's actually another paper I'm just going to drop in the chat too. This is called On the Nature of Revenue. When people ask what's kind of the most important pieces of literature in the search fund space, everybody knows about Buy Then Build, the Harvard Business Review. I would say this paper, it's actually a super quick read on the nature of revenue. It's an absolute must read. It's not talked about enough, but it really kind of puts into context the value of different types of revenue, and that kind of gets at cyclicality. It gets at the revenue cycle. It gets at the complexity, all the things of that nature. So again, applying this to the ice cream score, the total score is 2.72. Typically, our cutoff is anything under 3.5. We're not really interested in. So again, apply this to the ice cream store. We're not looking at any ice cream companies. That's going to save us a lot of time. Charlie, if you could please switch to the next slide, please.
Definitely.
Thank you, sir. Pest spraying industry. Again, this is a common target. You'll actually see a lot in the franchise space as well. But why is it popular? Let's quickly kind of run through this exercise. Industry growth, it's growing. It's actually around 5 to 6. So you probably could apply a 4 here to that. Industry size, again, it's massive. That's an easy 5. Again, kind of comparing apples to apples here. Cyclicality, a lot of these companies now have contract revenue. So even if there is a dip in the macro environment, these contracts will kind of defend against cyclicality. Also, a good way to think about cyclicality is with regard to discretionary spending. If you have to tighten your purse strings, you're likely going to cut out your ice cream budget, whereas you're probably not going to cut your pest spraying. So again, that's a high level with regard to cyclicality. Please look and download those PDFs that I put in the chat there. Carter and I refer to them all the time. They're a fantastic source. Again, looking at the complexity of the business, it receives a 4 here. Again, this is a pretty low CapEx business. It's not terribly complex. Again, we could spend an hour talking about this industry. The main point of it all, it spits out the score, 4.12. It's above a 3.5. Gets a green light from us. We're going to be looking at pest spraying industries going forward. So again, I'll send this Excel to Charlie, and he can kind of give it to you guys as well. You guys don't have to use this one, obviously. Doesn't matter to me, but definitely emphasize the fact that you want to be using a scorecard, applying it consistently, having your own cutoff, whether it is 3.5 or not. You guys can figure that out based on how harsh you are as scorers. But again, it's going to save you a tremendous amount of time. And at the end of the day, that is the most valuable currency during a search. So that's gonna wrap up our official presentation. Definitely leave some time for Q&A. Again, we're happy to take any questions. Again, we're kind of in the search process ourselves. Definitely think we can speak to these categories in depth. And again, keep it super casual, but thanks for listening, and thanks for having us, Charlie.
Yeah, of course. That was really, really helpful. I definitely have questions, but if anyone else has a question, just hop on and fire away. All right, I can kick it off. So, so you have this kind of macro kind of way of creating this funnel. What do you recommend for folks when so you're looking at a variety of businesses in the pest spraying space, for example? How do you recommend taking in we've had a lot of talks with lenders, debt service coverage, things of that nature, kind of those metrics. Do you guys kind of take that piece of like, can I even cover, how do I cover this debt with the macro side, like kind of, taking the granular with kind of a more macro approach? Do you guys have any, tips on kind of connecting those two dots?
Yeah, totally. So we actually didn't present it here. It's a whole nother presentation in and of itself. So we have a company scorecard too. So that kind of gets to the point that you're saying. So the industry scorecard, it's definitely useful for filtering by industries. So once you identify, say, pest controls is something that you're interested in. And actually, I'm going to take a step back. Typically, the largest macro filter, so to speak, you hear about geography, industry, and size. And the key is you want to be specific in two of them, not three of them, and not one of them. So if you're going to be specific in geography and size, you can still not be specific in industry, but apply the scorecard to industry. So again, that's just taking a step back and kind of looking at the three largest macro pillars: geography, size, and industry. In all cases, you can always apply the industry scorecard. Getting back to the question with regard to individual companies. So we have an individual company scorecard. I don't have it up right now, but it has a lot of the metrics that Charlie touched on: debt coverage, service ratio, EBITDA margins, top line, revenue growth. And it's the same thing where we're not looking at one category. It's a full combination of all of them. So you might have something that's weighted super heavily. EBITDA margin, yeah, I believe that's 30% on our scorecard. I'll send it to Charlie. He can send it around to you guys. But it's truly the combination of all these metrics coming together. It's often tough to tell if you're just searching for deals. It might give you a few data points. You might get top line revenue, you might get profit, you might get margin, you might get how the multiple that you're paying for it. But that's really not that's not enough for us to make a call. You have to put it in the context of the industry as well. If you're paying 7 times for a restaurant, you're paying 7 times for a software company, they're entirely different. So the scorecards kind of work in tandem. I'll send them both to Charlie, and it's a good exercise too. The more you use them, the quicker you'll be able to kind of look at a company quickly and identify which metrics you're looking for. When you get on a call with a broker or a business owner, you can have very pointed questions based on your scorecard. We'll often have our scorecard up when we're on a call, and the information that's not publicly available we're asked, and we'll literally fill it out as we're going forward. So again, that's a whole presentation itself. I'll give Charlie the scorecards. He can pass them out to you. And if you guys have questions about specific line items, definitely reach out to Carter and I.
Terrific. All right. Do we have any questions in the group? I can go all day. I'll keep bothering Harry.
Yeah, I'll go. Could you guys maybe talk about how to evaluate different CRMs in the process of trying to pick one? And I like what you guys said about not everybody comes from a sales background. Certainly not a lot of vets. It's hard to like even determine what the different features are and which ones I need, and then how to decide like what level. It seems like HubSpot maybe has way too many features. It seems like others maybe not enough. Just curious, how you guys think about that, or maybe just go with the one, you guys like what you like, and maybe that's the answer.
Yeah, completely. So a couple, I mean, so first of all, you don't need like a Salesforce. Salesforce is going to be way too complicated. You know, it's like enterprise. I mean, I'm sure they have lower end plans, but you know, it's able to be built out where you can have your own, you know, full user interface basically. And it's almost a website internally where, you know, the internal company can come in and do all sorts of different stuff. They get incredibly complicated. Quite frankly, I don't even know how to, you know, navigate a super extensive Salesforce program that these large enterprises use. But what we do and we use is Salesforce. It's a much more simplified. I'm sure it has capabilities to do similar things to Salesforce, but honestly, the only one that we've looked at Salesforce, HubSpot, and then SalesMate. And SalesMate had the most attractive, you know, trial period. We were able to actually build out our entire pipeline during the trial period. I think we got 2 or 3 weeks with the trial. And so we were able to do our whole data upload. We put it all into an Excel spreadsheet, built out the different stages, and actually uploaded it and got it running prior to our trial ending. And so that's kind of how we tried out SalesMate and just loved it. And so that's how we stuck with it. But honestly, I don't have too much information on other CRM systems, but I would recommend SalesMate.
Great.
Cool. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Quint. Good question.
No worries.
All right. Anybody else got any questions?
Yeah, cool question.
Hey, Ben.
Hey, how you doing, Charlie?
Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. In terms of like, so as you're evaluating companies, you're collecting data, right? Something that, I mean, that may not be mentioned is like, you know, kind of having a data room, right? Or like a place where you kind of safeguard or safety, like just data that you collect from different companies. I mean, are you using like Google Drive, or are you kind of like creating your own data room in the same way that you've created this like scorecard?
Exactly. So we use a private Google Drive.
Okay.
That's pretty much the extent of our data room.
Yeah, because the reason why I asked is because I've had people ask if I have a data room, and you know, the only time I've used a data room was, you know, while working at EY Parthenon, right? But it's enterprise level, like, yeah. So I was just curious if there was something that's at the individual level as a searcher.
Harry, you want to touch on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of said it. I mean, so like Carter and I were, even though we're in LA, I mean, definitely don't recommend driving, and we try to avoid that. So we're actually like physically separate. So we need a good way to kind of share information and documents. And we found, using like a shared drive of sorts. And just being organized is crucial. I mean, I can't emphasize enough of kind of initially setting up your drive in such a way, because you're going to be interacting with investors, brokers, small business owners, and being able to retrieve data quickly and have answers from them at your fingertips can be the difference of you kind of moving on to the next quote unquote stage versus somebody else. Being able to, you know, demonstrate that you're organized and having your data at your fingertips. So whether it's using a Microsoft product, Google Drive, or, you know, some system that works for you, you know, this is not a data room that anybody's going to audit. So as long as it makes sense to you, that's the most important thing.
Thank you.
Great. Got any other questions? I got some good ones to throw out, Harry, make him uncomfortable. All right, I'll ask, because I know you both have, you know, institutional knowledge and have just looked at a ton of deals. I'm personally bullish on the legal industry kind of deregulating and potentially kind of, I know that accounting firms have started to kind of go in that direction, so service industry. So I'm very interested in the legal industry and ETA in that space and allowing other folks to get in that game. I was just curious if you had to pick 1 or 2 industries that you're kind of excited about that, you know, I know 10 years ago, HVAC, no one was talking about it in the private equity world, and now it's a big thing. So what do you know, if you had a crystal ball with all the deals that you guys see, both, personally and what you guys are doing as searchers, but just from some of your institutional knowledge and your backgrounds, what would you say to just keep your eye on as far as for this group to kind of see how certain industries evolve?
Yeah, for sure. And I'd say a few kind of jump to mind. And it's interesting having these conversations because people with different backgrounds have different expertises and different theses. So Carter and I actually met at a company doing a roll up of manufacturing, metal fabrication. And it's interesting because that thesis is largely built around a geographic and demographic trend. So in Los Angeles, for whatever reason, the Anaheim area, there's thousands of these mom and pop metal fabrication shops. And for whatever reason, a lot of these people, these owners are around the same age. They're likely sick of California politics and they want to get out of the state. The real estate that these companies operate on is often worth maybe more than the business itself. So they're looking to exit these businesses pretty quickly. So that's a fairly geographic specific one. Metal fabrication in the LA area, there's a few companies doing roll-ups of that specifically. There's actually, I know offhand, there's a few other search funds kind of targeting metal fabrication shops, but in different geographies, one in Indiana, one in the Florida region. So it's when I think about industry, it's not necessarily a whole national view I'm looking for. I'm trying to pinpoint and marry a specific industry with a specific location as well. Because, for example, you might have a industry that the top line is growing nationally, but if a certain city or region is collapsing, well, then that's not a growing industry based on that location. So that's the first one that came to mind. And then something that it's hard to avoid is home healthcare services. You're seeing these pop up kind of all the time. Again, this is a demographic trend. You're seeing a lot of the boomer generation and older not really want to move into family homes, so to speak. They're much more likely to stay home and have healthcare services come and see them. It's interesting. I was reading a few articles this week about the hospice industry and how there's actually a lot of fraud there. So there's no doubt a lot of charlatans probably trying to offload home healthcare businesses. Typically, the ones that I'm seeing have very short operational histories, 4 to 5 years. But I would say that if you can find a home healthcare business that has a operational history of 10 plus years, and then you apply the company scorecard to it, and it comes above your threshold, that's a very exciting and attractive business. I don't know if Carter has. I don't know if you have any favorites.
Definitely. So, I mean, obviously we look at all sorts of different industries, but we apply some frameworks, not only the industry, outline, but also just some of our own just theory to it as well. And so, I always bring up the example of think about a elevator service repair company as sort of in theory, a dream company. I mean, there's definitely some, quote unquote hair with those deals, very hard to break into, it seems. And, it's technical, which could be looked upon as a good thing as well. But I mean, think about a skyscraper in New York City. If that elevator goes down, they have people on standby waiting to fix that elevator. And so they'll pay top dollar for it to be repaired. I mean, it's a absolute mandated critical service. And so really what we look for is, we call it mission critical. In this case, mission critical equipment repair services. And that's a specific niche that we kind of keep a close eye on.
Great. Yeah. Val, you got a question? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm interested in the I guess lab testing space, like healthcare adjacent lab testing services. And one of the things that I've been trying to think about is, and maybe you guys have a recommendation, is, do you have like a general kind of framework to think about value creation right? Like beyond, okay, looking at the EBITDA and the numbers, right? Because I mean, I imagine for, the objective would be to, for exit or maybe buy and hold, but like, do you have like a kind of like a general sense industry, like agnostic way that we can maybe think about value creation as we're evaluating deals or future value creation opportunities, like as we're like looking at
Yeah.
deals?
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, this is, and we can definitely talk offline about this. This is definitely, a whole presentation on its own. It's a probably the most important topic too, right? Everybody's so focused on the search. But the whole point is, to grow it and then eventually exit down the road, whether it's, holding for 3 years or 50 years. Value creation is key. I mean, that's something Carter and I, we've discussed and talked about it. It hasn't been our primary focus as of yet. We're also in the search phase. However, we had been part of a institution that was acquiring companies, and one of some high level stuff I would say that's fairly agnostic with regard to industry, because it is important to note, depending on the industry, there are different strategies. Value creation for a software company versus a lab testing, you're going to have different strategies, and obviously happy to speak offline. Super high level, some of the things that Carter and I observed, you can institute some basic technology and or marketing if it doesn't exist. So for example, go into the metal fabrication space, a lot of these companies are still based on paper. So a very easy thing you can do, instead of doing your accounting on paper, put it onto QuickBooks, get a email up and running. It's gonna save you in time, in the medium to long run, but most importantly, it's scalable. So when we're looking at these companies, depending on what your strategy is, your strategy might be to buy a single company and operate for the long term. It might be to buy a single company and use that as a platform to roll up 2 or 3. And if you're going to do that, you want to make sure from day one, you're putting in systems that are scalable. Paper's not scalable. Software is. So again, I'm happy to go in depth on different value add prospects. Again, to caveat, Carter and I wouldn't call us experts in this space. We have been involved in portfolio companies and been involved in the operation, so can definitely speak to it. And then I would say, just to touch on another very important one, maintaining as good a relationship as you can with the prior owner. This is somebody that has built the company, presumably, and got it to a place that's attractive enough that you want to buy it. So that tells you that he knows what he's doing. He probably has good relationships with his employees and or suppliers and likely customers. Maintaining a good relationship with this man or woman is going to be crucial to learn the tricks of the trade. Again, presumably, if you're buying a lab testing company, you probably don't have a ton of experience there. So he's going to be your main resource. So again, that's super high level, but I'd say day one, any change you make, you want it to be scalable. And then 2, really leaning on that former owner for knowledge. But then on the flip side of that, be able to cut ties with them in a professional way that signals that you are the new CEO going forward. Carter, I don't know if you have anything to
yeah,
add
I think you hit it, the nail right on the head there. With obviously there's private equity strategies, sale, leaseback, roll ups, all that type of other M&A approaches to implementing value into these companies. But I think Harry touched on it perfectly. The one thing I would add is be prepared, and we saw it sort of with our own eyes, be prepared for employees not to want change. You've probably heard that in the past, but especially in these companies that have been run by a single owner for 40, 50, 60 years, if they use paper currently, they're probably going to want to continue using paper, and moving to QuickBooks is going to be a big shock in their workflow. And so I don't think enough people talk about the actual disruption just making those minor changes is going to have within an organization. And so it's just something to keep, be aware of, and not think I'm going to come in here and just blast, all new technology, make all of these employees learn all new softwares and systems, and they're all going to be fine with it because it's more efficient and it makes the company more money. I think just being aware that these employees have done something for so long, they might be resistant to that change. And so just being cautious there, I think, is important.
Terrific. All right. What I think we're right at time. Oh, I see your question. Yep. I'll definitely get that for you, Val.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'll shoot it in the chat right now. It's IBVA.
Thanks, Carter. And
Yeah,
thank you both so much for your time. I know that a lot of times in the SMB Twitter space or just in general in this space, you see a lot of folks that talk in kind of these lofty, this is a good idea or think about that, but they don't really provide like a really tangible framework to go about this journey, this very, very tough and meaningful kind of journey. So, you guys taking the time to actually provide us with insights that you guys have acquired through really years and years of working and then also doing it yourselves. I'm just incredibly appreciative and grateful for your time and for actually providing a really tangible product for this community to use and to kind of move forward. So thank you so much, and I'll kind of leave it to you guys to have some closing remarks, and then we'll disseminate this to the rest of the group. I know that some folks weren't able to join, but we got a big group, and I know that they're really looking forward to hearing and seeing this recording. So thanks again, guys.
Yeah, no, sure. And thanks for having us, Charlie. This is a great platform, and having communities like this where you can not only share information, but then also share kind of the struggles along the way. I mean, you've heard probably the hero stories of somebody closing super quickly. More often than not, you're going to have close calls that don't close, and just having people that you can reach out to and kind of share what you're going through, so to speak. I don't know if it's a therapeutic release, but it's important to have. So it's a knowledge sharing hub, but it's also an emotional support community, which not to sound cheesy, but that's often very helpful. So definitely reach out if anybody has any questions. I'll try to be as candid as I can. I gave Charlie those scorecards. Definitely use them, or definitely use something like that. It'll make your life a lot easier. And happy meeting you all, and thanks for having us, Charlie.
Great.